What's up, everybody? Sorry about cutting the other stream short. Um, this was not planned. I wasn't necessarily planning to have a stream anyway. So I apologize for you guys. I had a lot to go through. I don't know if we're in terms of material. It was for a good reason, but it had to be taken care of, and we're going to come back in and try to pick up where we left off. Now, this whole issue with Amy Mack is comparable to a number of other issues that have happened in the past. There was Pamela Geller, if you remember, was in 2015. She was actually almost murdered by two gunmen who tried to assault her event in Texas. I think it was in either Galveston or Houston or one of those cities on the Gulf Coast. You see here, you can't. Damn it. Fucking people just can't leave me alone. Hold on. It's like you try to do things and everybody else is trying to do things with you. There's a Me Too movement for you. There you go. So there was a lot of harassment going on towards Pamela Geller, who was a huge anti-Islam critic. Now, just as it so happens, both Geller and Amy Mack are Jews. Thing is, I believe that every religion should be able to be criticized. I think that this is something that I wanted to talk about in the previous segment, and I forgot because of a lot of distractions. But Judaism should be able to be criticized because, otherwise you can't really get to the heart of, some of the more thorny issues within the religious belief system. You just get used to the same, circular logic all the time. We believe this because this has been our tradition. We don't have to justify anything to anybody. That's not how a real sustainable belief system works. There's a real issue that I see with Islam. There's no hope of Islam ever sustaining itself becoming a religion that can sustain itself within Western culture and compatible with Western culture without a conflict if this type of behavior continues. And, there was a beheading plot that happened against Pamela Geller, she is Islamophobic, if you want to call it that. She's a definite opponent of the religion of Islam. And a Massachusetts man decided, what's the way to, rebut her viewpoints? To plot to behead her. This guy, David Wright, admitted sharing Islamic State propaganda online and discussing an attack against Geller. And this was concurrent with the cartoon contest in Texas. It was in Garland, Texas. But in any case, I think that might be in northern Texas. I'm not sure. But in either case, we're talking about a real issue of, this woman, she has beliefs that are, they're inflammatory towards other people. But she was threatened with her life. People showed up to the actual show to try to murder her and Bob Spencer, who, by the way, is a brilliant, brilliant guy, whether you agree with him or not. One of the more knowledgeable people on Islam, Bob Spencer. So there's Robert Spencer, and then Richard Spencer is not related to him at all. Bob Spencer is actually a Lebanese American. So this we covered. So what they're doing here by exposing her for living in New Jersey, and her husband is a WWE guy, and also giving enough clues as to where his her brother has a deli. Jeez, people, fucking let me go. So look, we're going to just silence this piece of shit. there. So she had an organization called Resistance Against the Islamic Radicals. What's inflammatory about that? Is criticizing Islamic radicals really the problem? And you know, there's all these. It says Janet Linus, a county attorney in Johnson County, Iowa, made the list because she donated to the campaign of Mazahir Salih. Let me see here. She created a website, set up a Facebook page and a Twitter handle, and recruited Cortez to design artwork from behind bars, according to Gladio. Rare's mission would be to stop the jihadi infiltration in our American communities. Mecklenburg didn't mention herself anywhere on the organization's website. Under an accomplices section, however, she posted names, photos, and the contact information for people and groups she believed were collaborating with jihadi terrorists. That could mean anyone with a connection to Islam. Well, I think you're making that connection. You know, I don't think. Look, the fact of the matter is that there are people here who they do support bringing Islam, the Sharia law, to take over the legal system in the United States of America. So soliciting denunciation, if the local garbage man was seen going into a mosque, you could submit that information to the site and she would post it, said Gladio. Gladio is the woman who basically leaked all the information about her former friend, Amy Mack, to the Huffington Post. Soliciting denunciations from members of the public had a Gestapo Stasi link to it. And so there you go, making the Nazi analogy. And Rare's roster of accomplices included city council members, rabbis, police chiefs, mosques, newspapers, and other businesses. It looked like a target list. During the reporting of this story, the contact information for the accomplices was removed from the Rare website. Janet Linus, the county attorney in Johnson County, Iowa, made the list because she donated to the campaign of Mazahir Salih, a Muslim woman who became the first Sudanese American elected to public office in the United States when she won a city council seat in Iowa City last week. Linus, who is the chief law enforcement officer for Johnson County, didn't realize Mecklenburg had targeted her until she was contacted by Huffington Post. It concerned me seeing this, accusing me and all the other people of being jihadists, Linus said. While it's ridiculous and everything she's saying is false and ludicrous, I do wonder who might be reading this and might follow up and want to contact or threaten anyone on the list. So there's a difference between what Mecklenburg did and what Huffington Post did. This woman is an elected law enforcement officer for Johnson County, Iowa. So she is a public official. Her contact information is public record. Not the same thing with Mecklenburg. So there's no, like, people would say, well, she would dox people too. In this case, it's not the same thing. You know, it says here, council members, rabbis, police chiefs, mosques, newspapers, and other businesses. Well, those things are public record. People shame so by this standard, the Starbucks people, the people who shamed Starbucks into, you know, the sensitivity training bullshit and that settlement, they're doing the same thing. It's intimidation tactics. Let's see if Lennon's back. I'm back, but I'm sleepy. Well, I mean, sorry. I mean, it's 2 hours and 8 minutes since 4:20. I mean, I'm sorry. I couldn't time it any better for you. Although you are in California, so what would it have been? It would have been 1:20 for you. Wow, you get started early, buddy. Mecklenburg had plenty of warning signs that her hate slinging might have consequences. My dad's bugging out, she texted last year, around the time she was working on RAIR. He calls me every day bugging out. His business is in a Muslim hotbed, and my brother's restaurant has the same name. World Trade Center Muslim terrorist mosque is down the street. Mecklenburg's Islamophobia also put Sino in an awkward position. In February 2017, after his startup went out of business following a trademark dispute, Sino found a new job with the WWE, the Connecticut-based pro wrestling entertainment company co-founded by Linda McMahon, who now works in the Trump administration. Sino, who did not respond to HuffPost's requests for comment, became a senior vice president responsible for global content distribution and business development. Mecklenburg told Gladio that the WWE knew about Amy Mack and had asked Sino to keep his connection to his wife quiet. So Mecklenburg told Gladio that the WWE knew about Amy Mack. Okay. When asked by HuffPost about the veracity of this claim, the WWE at first offered a cryptic answer. This is the first time we're hearing about Amy Mecklenburg, said a corporate spokesperson last Thursday, requesting not to be identified by name. The company had reason to worry about Mecklenburg's Islamophobia. In the early part of 2018, the WWE and Saudi Arabia finalized a controversial 10-year deal to bring pro wrestling there. Sino was negotiating TV deals in the United Arab Emirates, according to the WWE. Back in Fishkill, his wife was casting Muslims as subhuman filth. Twitter's policy against hateful conduct prohibits behavior that incites fear about a protected group. Well, who's the protected group? And repeated and/or non-consensual slurs, epithets, racist and sexual tropes, or other content that degrades someone. One digital sleuth who tracks Amy Mack told HuffPost that he has reported the account to Twitter more than 50 times to no avail. Although the company has withheld Mecklenburg's account in Germany and France, Twitter has done little to cramp her style in the U.S. So basically, what they're trying to say is, we're a platform where we're supposed to bring people together, but not the wrong people together. So if we deem what you say to be wrong, we're going to do everything we can to silence you in countries where your opinions shouldn't be. Now, France and Germany, by the way, those are countries where people have been killed in truck attacks by Islamic, jihadists. So, they can talk all they want about this stuff, but, how they're supposed to protect certain classes. But if you don't, who radicalized those people that did the truck attacks? Does Twitter do anything to deal with that? So, you have Pamela Geller being basically almost assassinated by a two-man hit squad. You have Amy Mack, they now know what her husband's name is. He's unemployed because of it. This is the Huffington Post basically trying to character assassinate her and her entire family. Mecklenburg appeared to operate without fear of fall anywhere. As this story surfaced near publication, she kept tweeting hate even when her husband's job was in jeopardy. Last Friday, after HuffPost asked the WWE a second time if anyone there had known about Amy Mack before hiring Sino, the company responded definitively. No, said the WWE spokesperson. Now that it has come to our attention, Sal Sino is no longer an employee. So they got him fired from his job. Not her, they got him fired. Sino showed up at the Fishkill apartment complex over Memorial Day weekend, dry cleaned shirts hanging in the back of his Audi A5. On Tuesday, he was still there, and Mecklenburg was still tweeting. Okay, so that was last Friday. They fire him. Now, if they fire him, the question is if he gets severance pay for that, because is it a for-cause hiring? Len McCarthy is asking, did she say subhuman filth? Well, that was the Huffington Post making, they wrote that. I don't know what she's written. You can get her on her Twitter account. It's at Amy Mack. I think I put it in the description. I put it wrong, but it's Amy Mack, no space. Sino showed up at the Fishkill apartment complex over Memorial Day weekend. Okay. She raved about jihadi rape gangs and threw her support behind Tommy Robinson, a far-right, anti-Muslim, violent British criminal who was arrested last week for contempt of court after live streaming about Muslim pedophiles outside a gang rape trial in Leeds, England. She defended Roseanne Barr after Barr tweeted racist and Islamophobic comments and anti-Semitic lies. Look, you can't accuse Roseanne Barr of being anti-Semitic if she's Jewish. And by the way, Amy Mack is Jewish, and she said so several times. On Wednesday, she emailed this HuffPost reporter not to answer questions or address or clarify any of the information I'd gathered about her. She wanted to muscle me. My attorney, Martin Garbus, will contact you tomorrow morning, she wrote. Martin Garbus is a high-profile attorney who has represented Daniel Ellsberg, Nelson Mandela, and Don Imus, among many others. Two of his current clients, Paul and Chris Galbatz, are major Islamophobes. When Garbus did not call me at the designated time Thursday morning, I called him. And he said, I don't represent that woman, he told me, and then hung up the phone. But that wasn't the end for Mackelberg. He posted a long thread on Twitter blaming me for the WWE's decision to fire Sino over her bigotry. Within minutes, her followers began calling me with threats. You better be careful because people are out there targeting you now, one said. You're going to get it now, said another. So the thing is that this is a person who doxes somebody's personal information in terms of where she lives, which high school she went to. So she can't ever go back to that high school for any time. Think about that. East Brunswick High School in New Jersey. She can no longer go there for any high school reunion because it could be under threat of a jihadist attack. Because they could be saying, well, it could be maybe Mac's going to go there and we could get her. Just like the same thing happened with Pamela Geller. This is a real question. If she is under threat now, as she has been, there are tweets from her. I think I showed one in the previous one. If not, I think I have one linked. Here's one. So you can see this, Len McCarthy. The amount of Jew hatred and death threats lodged at me every day by white supremacists, jihadists, and liberal extremists is exhausting. So she is Jewish. She's never denied it. And this guy's saying, I'm not going to read this on screen because I don't want to get a strike for saying the things that he's saying. But this is a person who sent her these direct messages. Okay? Now, in any case, there's all these people who are saying, well, she shouldn't have been doxing people either. Well, if there were people that she doxed illegally, then people should have reported that. I'm not going to justify doxing, but doxing somebody who's she's a public official, a sheriff in Iowa City for something that she did, contributing campaign, giving campaign contributions to, a Muslim activist who wanted to run for city council. Look, I don't participate in causes like this. It's still the First Amendment right of people to do that. And the information of a sheriff, for example, is public record. It's not doxing or whatever she was. She was like the chief law enforcement person, county attorney. So basically, a prosecutor. A prosecutor it's public record. It is. And then they keep going and talk about, Anders Breivik and whatever. Well, I mean, why don't you answer for Charlie Hebdo? Okay, so what he's basically doing is he's inviting a new Charlie Hebdo. This is a guy speaking on screen.
Anonymity of the internet makes the alt-right one of the most dangerous forms of American extremism yet. It's tempting to write off members of the alt-right, like Andrew Anglin, the founder of the world's most popular neo-Nazi website, The Daily Stormer. It's easy to dismiss them as your typical extremist, as disturbed or fringe. The reality is, however, we can no longer ignore them and hope they'll go away. It's not just about how popular these ideas are and someone like Andrew Anglin is. It's about a movement that we see growing, online and offline. Since 2012, American white nationalist groups have seen their Twitter followers grow by more than 600%. The Anti-Defamation League found that since the inauguration, the frequency of anti-Semitic hate incidents has risen 67%. One study even showed that 2/3 of white Americans would consider supporting a nativist xenophobic party. The history of the United States is full of extremism and organized hate. From the Know Nothing movement of the 19th century to the KKK, to the neo-Nazi skinhead gangs of the 1980s. What makes the alt-right different, and in some ways more dangerous, is its ability to radicalize people from behind computer screens. The alt-right uses the anonymity of chat rooms and message boards such as 4chan, 8chan, Reddit, Facebook to recruit young men online and expose them to toxic ideas Eventually, these young men end up embracing them. When you're anonymous online, you can get away with almost anything. It's what allows them to recruit widely. It allows them to spread their propaganda in ways that white nationalist groups never could in the past. They grew in the shadows for years, and now they're here, and we have to deal with them. If we don't pay attention to these new radicals preaching hate, misogyny, and fascism from the dark corners of the internet, and yes, preaching violence too, the kind that we saw in Charlottesville, their movement is likely to become more extreme and more dangerous.
Now, I want to say this. That's Luke O'Brien. And Len McCarthy is saying correctly, this guy is a fascist and wants people doxxed and jailed, and the ADL counts all the hoaxes too after they're exposed. The ADL, I have to say, I don't know how many times I do have to say it, is the aiding and abetting defamation league. What does this guy is 150 mean? I don't know what you mean by that. In any case, they do the same thing all the time. Pamela here. So when this happened to Pamela Geller in 2015, the same thing was said by Michael Kagan, the he's the president of People for the American Way. For those of you that don't know, we talk a little about, with the Mattis file, with American Bridge 21st Century, the super PAC. People for the American Way was the first super PAC ever, or I don't know if you would call it a super PAC, but it's pretty close. So it's just a 501c4 nonprofit organization, and they're the people behind Right Wing Watch. Okay, Right Wing Watch, for those of you that don't know, is that organization. They're the ones who smear Styx Hexenhammer, for example. Styx Hexenhammer has some opinions that I think are kind of out of this world. Not just about Israel, for example, but about abortion. But you have to take the balance of a person's value. He does amazing analysis, does some great reactions. So, some of the reactions I don't agree with, but I think that they're fantastically elucidated by him. And they pretty much consider him, a hate monger. He's not a hate monger. The guy's almost a pacifist, an anti-interventionist guy. But when this went down on May 7th, 2015, I think the attack went down on May 4th, 2015, May 3rd, the attack on her event. Pamela Geller was basically, he wrote this article saying, I am grateful to live in a country where even someone as hateful as Pamela Geller can speak her mind. She can smear President Obama as the jihadist in the White House and speculate that he choked up with tears when he ordered the killing of Osama bin Laden. She can say that Pope Francis called for affection and respect towards Muslims, means he has become an imam. She can compare Jewish Americans who support President Obama to Nazi appeasers and call comedian Jon Stewart the most disgusting Jew on the planet. She can suggest banning Muslims from becoming airline pilots. She can then claim that anyone who doesn't want to hear her speak is enforcing the Sharia. I'm also grateful to live in a country where the law protects Geller's rights to say these things. Sunday's incident in which two gunmen tried to attack an anti-Islam event that Geller and virulently anti-Muslim Dutch politician Geert Wilders hosted in Texas was deeply troubling. Our freedom of speech means nothing if people are too afraid to speak. We saw this in a different context earlier this year when Sony pulled a raunchy geopolitical buddy comedy from theaters under threat of terror attacks. I think that was the interview, by the way. Say what you will about Pamela Geller. She has not backed down from any of her vile positions under fear of violence. But it's important to remember that the fact that she was attacked for her speech doesn't make Geller a hero or her speech any less hateful. As Talking Points Memo's Josh Marshall put it yesterday, a hate group is a hate group the day after someone takes a shot at them just like it was the day before. Local Muslim groups had the right idea when they stayed away from Geller's event, declining the protest so that they wouldn't give Geller the attention she so desperately wanted. Those who expose her hateful rhetoric, like my PFAW colleagues, that's People for the American Way, also do important work, making sure the public knows that just because she is targeted by violent idiots doesn't make her a serious thinker or a hero. I know that Geller won't back down from her hateful rhetoric after this event. In fact, the attempted attack will probably embolden her and cause some to take her more seriously, and we shouldn't stop criticizing Geller, or as she puts it, enforcing Sharia when she's wrong. As People for the American Way wrote in 2009, in response to a renewed spate of inflammatory right-wing rhetoric, Americans must be willing to use their First Amendment freedoms to challenge those who exploit their political positions or media megaphones to promote lies that are intended to inflame rather than inform, that encourage paranoia rather than participation, and whose consequences are at best divisive and at worst violently destructive. So this Kagan guy, or Keegan, sorry, he is, he's written for Alternet. Where is it? I think it's this one. No, not that one. But he has written for Alternet. One second. So they basically, you have Alternet, which is a publication that is almost entirely consistent with Iran. They have basically the same foreign policy as Iran, which again is First Amendment. But he writes. He had an article with them. One second. I had it earlier. Looks like they have a lot of articles that start with the new McCarthyism. There was a different one I was looking for. Here we go. So this is like all the time they have the new McCarthyism. Now this is Alternet, which is supposedly, we're the progressive alternative or whatever. We're Max Blumenthal, who can hardly go 5 minutes without pretending he's the most persecuted man in America. And he says right wingers in Congress targeting America's Muslim community, and they're complaining about Peter King questioning Eric Holder, who recently said that the cooperation of Muslim and American communities has been absolutely essential in identifying and preventing terrorist threats. Really? Well, the fact of the matter is, how many terrorist threats were, not prevented because of the scaring off people because of Islamophobia? There was San Bernardino. There was, how about the Boston bombing, which was not prevented because reasons, Russia gave us the information, and I guess we'll get a mulligan next time. We'll get him. Well, they didn't. Fort Hood shooting. They had plenty of information ahead of time. They ended up designating it as a workplace violence incident. I think there was an Army military recruitment shooting in Tennessee that happened. There was, did I say San Bernardino already? There was the Pulse nightclub shooting. And after every one of these incidents, nobody claims that this has anything. People are like, first thing they say is, it has nothing to do with Islam. It's the stop, hashtag not all. Then after every school shooting, they say, well, it's toxic masculinity or white men, whatever. The last school shooting, the one in Houston, they had to take their foot off the gas pedal because he was some sort of, I think it was Greek American, some sort of a left winger. I didn't really delve into that one so much, but they couldn't use it for their narrative. And and they basically called it McCarthyism. Well, what's the McCarthyism today, guys? I mean, what's is Islamophobia the McCarthyism today, or is it something else? I think Lenin McCarthy, you can put it in the chat. I know what you're going to say. This is basically the type of behavior that we see from people who are speech policing, and it's the same thing. I said that it's the same as Salman Rushdie. Go back, see the part 1. Sorry, I had to stop it. But really, what's happening is that Salman Rushdie, he had to basically flee for his life because of a book he wrote, because the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution in Iran put out a fatwa calling for his death. And you want to talk to me about Islamophobia? This guy's been living for decades under threat to his life. He would be executed. This is not a Jewish person. This is a Muslim Indian. Every time there is an Islamic terrorist attack, mainstream media is like, are the Muslims okay? Especially in the UK. Yeah, they do. They say that's the first thing they do. The first thing they do. And now there's the whole knife thing or whatever. It's rarer here in the U.S. now to have these things happening, possibly because of Trump's immigration policies and the fact that people are discouraged from doing it. In England, it's continued unabated. Not just that, but petty crime in general is going worse there. I think what was it a week ago too? There was another terror attack in Belgium, which has suffered its own share of terror attacks. So yeah, they're saying, oh, Pamela Geller is not a hero, and this is the guy reacting to her almost being murdered in Texas. That's the way they react to tragedy. They don't. First of all, they don't go into the fact that the reason that she was almost murdered was that she dared to have a contest where you draw the Prophet Muhammad. And I'll say this, I was watching yesterday. I don't know if Arjun's going to watch later, but I was watching this series called The Wild Wild West. And it's not about, it's not that Will Smith film, about the Rajneesh cult in Oregon, which is a Hindu cult, which goes really in depth into the issues that were there, the indoctrination and the threats to the people in the surrounding areas and the controlling behavior and the threats to it. And there was, I think, years and years ago, there was another video that I watched by Carol Mastroianni about the threat of Hinduism and yoga in America. And I'd like to say, I don't think that people should be policed for being Hindu, but those things are still allowed to be published in our country, in the United States of America. We're allowed to publish, things that are critical of Hinduism. In fact, that documentary, let's see, The Wild Wild West. I recommend you watch it. It is good. I know Mark Duplass is on it. I have to find it. One second. I don't have it with me, but let's see. Netflix, Rajneesh, Wild Wild Country. Okay, so this was it. Wild Wild Country and it does go into Bhagwan Sri Bhagarwal. Wait, no, I don't, that wasn't his name. It was Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. That was his name, who was the head of the cult. And look, it goes. Difficult questions are asked about whether this cult really intended to attack a community in Oregon. And I was watching it yesterday. I'm like, you know what? I think people should be free to believe in this religion, even though I disagree with Hinduism, to be honest. But we have a freedom of religion in this country. We also have a freedom to criticize religions. We never see, at least to my knowledge, Hindus protesting at people criticizing their religions, including in this documentary, which, by the way, was fair. It did interview his secretary, what's her name? It was, let's see. I forgot the name. I was watching it pretty late yesterday, but I recommend it. It's called Wild Wild Country. And you basically get a real glimpse at what criticism of religion really should be. You're able to go interview people, talk about it openly, talk about the criminal law issues of it. And the reason that we don't have that with Islam is because of publications like the Huffington Post. It's because of the Atlantic, too, which published this bullshit. And they have this other one, A Muslim Among Settlers, 16 minutes of this. And you were able to go there and you were able to come back. So what do you want? We're not going to watch that today because I don't have 16 minutes to spend on that. And people were talking about, we'll go into this for a second. One of the people that really pisses me off sometimes is Jimmy Dore, talking all the time about, killing civilians or whatever. Killing civilians is, you have to verify that somebody is a civilian. They talk all the time about how there's unarmed people over in the Gaza Strip. Okay, you can't verify if somebody's unarmed unless you do an inspection of their person. That's the people who died on the Gaza Strip. First of all, they were verified. They were verified to be, in many cases, 50 of the 62 that died on the day of the embassy being open. They were verified later by Hamas to have been members. Okay, and therefore, if they are members of the group, members of a group that has an armed faction, it's not even a faction, it's part of the group. The armed offshoot offshoot wouldn't be the word either. The armed branch of Hamas, the Izzadin al-Qassam brigades. When you don't accept that, then you have to really, you have to be a special kind of ignorant and a special kind of willfully blind in order to believe that thousands of people go to to try to tear down a fence, and because supposedly they don't present a threat against the soldiers on the other side, that they shouldn't be shot. Well, look, you're charging at a fence. You're trying to get through it. What are you trying to do on the other side? You know that there's soldiers on the other side. So they go up to the fence and they start cutting it with wire cutters, and they start going through it with meat cleavers or whatever. And then they get through. There's a video. I'll just show you the video of it. Okay. Okay. So it is a Jewish news syndicate, so sorry if I can't give you an unbiased news source because a lot of people are not showing the story at all. But here we go. So this is from Al-Aqsa TV. This is from a different day, April 27th.
الصامدون في أرض فلسطين من بحرها إلى نهرها نحن على موعد مع يوم.
So they say from the Jordan to the Mediterranean, that means they're trying to take over the whole country. Take the entire country back.
الزحف باتجاه أراضينا المحتلة أرض فلسطين المسلوبة حيث قمنا اليوم بخص السلك الرئيسي للعدو الصهيوني على حدود قطاع غزة وشرقي وبالتحديد شرقي مخيم جباليا. وبإذن الله سنقوم اليوم بدخول أراضينا المحتلة وإشعال ثورة في وجه العدو الصهيوني لنقول بكلمة واحدة أن هذا العدو إلى زوال
So it says here, this Jamarl Thomas. Next time, I want you guys to go to Jamarl Thomas's channel, and next time he has a discussion on this, you can link to this video. It's from well, let me just give you here. It is a Facebook video, okay? And it says here, he always says, oh, they're unarmed civilians, they're peaceful protesters. It says, this is what they said, that what was taken by force will be regained by force alone. This isn't the language of a peaceful protest. So he says it again, will be redeemed by force again. We have called this Friday the Friday of the rebel youth. جمعة الشباب الثائر فنحن وحدة قص السلك الزائر بإذن الله. الله أكبر ولله الحمد. 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 خيبر خيبر يا يهود. خيبر خيبر يا يهود. Okay, so let me explain this here. This is to offset all the people who would say, you know, I had an argument last week, or I think it was this week, that with Jamarl Thomas, and he discounts that it's a religious conflict at all. What that chant says, Khaybar Yahud, mean the Battle of Khaybar was the 7th century battle between the army of the Prophet Muhammad and a Jewish tribe. I think it's the Bani Qurayza in the village oasis of the oasis village of Khaybar, which is in the Arabian Peninsula. And basically he killed them all. So this is a warning to the Jews, nothing to do with Zionism. There was no Zionism at the time of the Battle of Khaybar. Zionism is a little more of a 20th, well, really a 19th or 18th century political movement. It's not necessarily a religious movement. In fact, in many cases, it's not. It has nothing to do with Zionism. This is saying we are going to go in there and kill you all. It's saying that. Well, I missed something too. 1 second. الشباب الثائر فنحن وحدة قص السلك الزائر بإذن الله. الله أكبر ولله الحمد. No, that was it. الله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر ولله الحمد. خيبر خيبر يا يهود. خيبر خيبر يا يهود. خيبر خيبر يا يهود. خيبر خيبر يا يهود. جيش محمد بدأ يعود. جيش محمد بدأ يعود. جيش محمد سوف يعود. جيش محمد. Did they say the word Palestine in there at all? Did they say the word, you know, we want legitimate rights here? No, they didn't. They said nothing about that. All of this is religious symbology. And what I'm trying to say here is that in many cases, the defenders, those who consider themselves defenders of the Muslims or of the Palestinians against Islamophobia, are usually themselves, they're atheists who prefer to, they're not looking at the world as it truly is. They prefer to look at people who believe in religion as misguided dupes. And when people say that their motivation is religious, they either filter it through 2 different or 3 different lenses. Okay, if it's a person who's a Christian who's saying it, they call them a religious fanatic and some sort of backwards dinosaur or something. And if it's a Muslim that says it, they say, well, what they're really doing is they're articulating their own frustration at their situation, their horrible situation at home. And that's a very arbitrary way to put it, you know, because first of all, you're not seeing Christian Palestinians there's Christian Palestinians, by the way, in the West Bank and Gaza as well. Not as many in Gaza. And you're not seeing them going and rioting at the fence and trying to get in and murder people. Okay, you see, I mean, there's also, by the way, there's atheists. There's atheist Palestinians and the amount of atheist Palestinian terrorism. You know, there's, for example, there was the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. They have not committed a significant terror attack in years. I think it was since like the early 2000s. So those people that are saying, well, it's really related to the open air prison and their treatment in Gaza or whatever, you're not even listening to what they're saying. You're trying to use your own thank you, Len McCarthy. Yeah, they'll say, it's racist because you're criticizing Islam, but then they don't even want to talk about Islam as a motivation. They want to talk about Muslims as a race, but they don't want to talk about Islam as a motivation. No, Islam is a religion. It's a belief system. And this is not, here we go, suspect in attack. So those people complaining about, extrajudicial execution, it says suspect in Palestinian assassination attempt among 4 dead in Gaza shootout, says Hamas. And this is from Reuters. The writer is Nidal al-Morabi, which Morabi would probably be like a Moroccan name. It says Hamas said its security forces in Gaza shot dead on Thursday the main suspect behind an attempt to assassinate the Palestinian prime minister, a bombing that threatens to unravel its reconciliation agreement with the West Bank-based government. Len McCarthy says Gaza is fucked up, though. It is kind of fucked up. 2 members of the Hamas security forces and 1 accomplice of the suspect also died in the shootout, the Hamas-led Gaza Interior Ministry said. The bombing of Prime Minister Rami Hamdallah's convoy in Gaza last week dealt another blow to efforts to implement a unity deal between the 2 main Palestinian factions, Islamist Hamas, which dominates Gaza, and Fatah, the main party in the Palestinian Authority in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. The motorcade Hamdallah and Palestinian security chief Majid Faraj was attacked. They're leaving out a few words. On March 13th, shortly after it entered Gaza from neighboring Israel, they were uninjured. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas had blamed Hamas for the explosion. After Thursday's raid, a spokesman for Hamdallah's government questioned Hamas's version of events and again accused the group of bearing full criminal responsibility for the assassination attempt. Once more, Hamas is going along the path of fabricating weak stories that make no sense, the spokesman Youssef al-Mahmoud said. More than a decade after Hamas fighters drove the Palestinian Authority out of Gaza, Egypt has been brokering a reconciliation deal under which the PA would again assume administrative and security control in the territory of 2 million people. Hamdallah has been, by the way, Hamdallah is a name that would probably mean praise the Lord, has been spearheading the Hamdallah, I think it does, I could be wrong, has been spearheading those efforts on behalf of the PA, with both sides still divided over how to share power in Gaza, where Hamas is still the strongest armed force. Abbas has argued that the assassination attempt proved that the agreement was failing and that Hamas could not be trusted. In a statement, the Hamas-run Interior Ministry in Gaza said its security forces investigating the assassination attempt had surrounded a hideout in the central region of the enclave and came under fire after demanding the suspects surrender. It said a man named Anas Abu Husa, whom it identified as the prime suspect in the bombing, was killed in this ensuing shootout, along with an accomplice and 2 Hamas security men. The ministry did not say whether Abu Husa was affiliated with any militant group. Abbas has offered no evidence of the involvement of Hamas in the attempt against Hamdallah's life, but he said he did not trust Hamas to investigate the incident honestly and that there had been 0 progress in the reconciliation. Hamas seized the Gaza Strip from forces loyal to Fatah in 2007. The Palestinian reconciliation effort is opposed by Israel, which considers Hamas a group dedicated to its destruction and an implacable foe. U.S. brokered peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians collapsed in 2014, in part over a unity deal that year between PA and Hamas, as well as other issues. So those saying, it's Israel's fault, everything that's happening in Gaza. Well, they're shooting each other too. So are you going to blame the things that they do to each other? Then they're going to say, oh, you're using it like black on black crime. Okay, how about this one? There was a self-immolation over here on May 25th. And look at the way Mondoweiss, see here. You see, Gaza man dies from self-immolation protest. It says, this guy's name was Fathi Harb. Now, I saw here it said motives. It says a 20-year-old Palestinian in critical condition Sunday. So this is from Faris Akram. That's an Arab person. Hey, Reverend Starkiller. He was despairing over Gaza's dire living conditions, and Hamas, the Islamic militant group that rules the territory, alleging personal problems. Suicide is strictly forbidden in Islam, and cases are rare in conservative Gaza, but dozens were reported last year. Oh, so, it's so bad, but it's like, let's think about how they tackle that issue. It's illegal it's immoral under Islam to kill yourself, but one of the most Islamic places in the world, people are killing themselves. Okay, and he says the motive might have been related to Hamas. In the brief nighttime clip, Fatih is already ablaze in front of a residential building. Onlookers rush to put out the fire with rugs and water. Majda, the young man's mother, told the Associated Press Sunday that a day earlier her eldest son had said he was going to collect a payment. But half an hour later, police came to her home saying he was in hospital after setting himself ablaze. On Sunday, Fatih was unconscious and connected to breathing tubes at the intensive care unit of Gaza City's Shifa Hospital. So, let me see here. They don't really go into further what happened. But other people make an assumption. Here's Mondo Weiss claiming that. So this guy is wearing this. This is the checkered keffiyeh of Fatah. That's not a. If he's wearing this, it's likely not. It's more than likely he's not a Hamas supporter, because that's their rival. It says, after a savage, decade-long Israeli blockade by land, sea, and air, Gaza is like a car running on fumes. The United Nations has repeatedly warned that the enclave will be uninhabitable within a few years. So let me see how many times they mention Hamas here. So this is from Jonathan Cook. So it says, in part, according to his family, he was angry with the Palestinian leadership. His family was trapped in the unresolved feud between Gaza's rulers, Hamas, and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. Then it said, but that dispute has led the PA to cut the salaries of its workers in Gaza, including Harb's father. So then he says, but Harb undoubtedly had a larger audience in mind too. Well, no. You can't say based on something you don't know. He doesn't make any statement. You don't have video of him saying anything. He doesn't have a living will that he talks about. It says, until a few years ago, Hamas regularly fired rockets out of the enclave in a struggle both to end Israel's continuing colonization of Palestinian land and to liberate the people of Gaza from their Israeli-made prison. But the world rejected the Palestinians' right to resist violently and condemned Hamas as terrorists. Israel's series of military camp rampages in Gaza to silence Hamas were meekly criticized in the West as disproportionate. So this person is saying basically this. Hamas should be able to attack people, and that's the end of the story. The Palestinians of the West Bank and in Jerusalem, where there is still direct contact with Israeli Jews, usually as settlers or soldiers, watched as Gaza's armed resistance failed to prick the world's conscience. For some took up the struggle as individuals, targeting Israelis or soldiers at checkpoints. They grabbed a kitchen knife to attack Israelis or soldiers at checkpoints, or rammed them with a car, bus, or bulldozer. Again, the world sided with Israel. Resistance was not only futile, it was not denounced as illegitimate. So what he's basically saying is, you can, according to Mondo Weiss, this is Jonathan Cook, a British journalist, he thinks, if they want to ram a bunch of civilians at a checkpoint or at a bus stop with a car, that's legitimate resistance. So, in fact, the demonstrators have been cast as Hamas stooges. The United States ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, blamed the victims under occupation, saying Israel had a right to defend its border, while the British government claimed the protests were hijacked by terrorists. None of this can have passed Harb by. When Palestinians are told they can protest peacefully, Western governments mean quietly in ways that Israel can ignore, in ways that will not trouble consciences or require any action. In Gaza, the Israeli army is renewing the Dahiyya doctrine, this time by shattering thousands of Palestinian bodies rather than infrastructure. Harb understood only too well the West's hypocrisy in denying Palestinians any right to meaningfully resist Israel's campaign of destruction. The flames that engulfed him were intended also to consume us with guilt and shame, and doubtless more in Gaza will follow his example. Will Harb be proved right? Can the West be shamed into action? Or will we continue blaming the victims to excuse our complicity in 7 decades of outrages committed against the Palestinian people? So this Jonathan Cook, who is, it's writing for Mondoweiss. Mondoweiss, again, is a very pro. I think Mondoweiss and Mint Press are the most pro-Iranian publications that there are. Let me see here. There's a Cook without an E. Says one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Well, it is. But I mean, look at this. It says, under Trump, the Israel lobby is a hydra with many heads. West's failure to act will be the cause of the next massacre. What does he mean by acting? Hamas and Fatah, why the two groups are failing. Let's see that one. Ideological bankruptcy, no need for fear. Return to conflict's roots. He says, but the Palestinians' historic compromise had turned into a dead end. The two-state idea has never was never seen as ideal. No one marches for it or is prepared to sacrifice their life for it, he said. But that pragmatism has yielded no results and has led to great popular disenchantment. Now, ordinary people are going back to the roots of the Palestinian issue. That appears to return Palestinian nationalism to its original vision of a single state as long propounded by the PLO under its leader Yasser Arafat. He only accepted partition of historic Palestine in the late 1980s, faced with overwhelming Western pressure. Well, the reason he accepted it was because those people, they divorced this from everything that was happening in the world. The PLO was allied with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. They never won a single conflict. And when the Soviet Union, they fell apart, and obviously, when did the two-state solution come to, it didn't come to fruition, but when did it come to the public discourse, and when did it start to actually get worked on? In 1993, after Arafat's Soviet allies were already gone, they'd fallen apart. He didn't have any patron, so he was running out of money. So essentially, he'd been on the losing side of a conflict, and he could have gotten a very sweet deal out of it. And they're quoting this woman, Diana Boutou, who is she's a former negotiator on behalf of the Palestine Authority. They're talking about Marwan Barghouti, who's a Palestinian leader who's been in prison. Marwan Barghouti is a 5-time convicted murderer, I think. And they consider him the Mahatma Gandhi. Barghouti is widely reported to be a student of nonviolent strategies of resistance like those of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. He is said to have found support among the jailed leaders of Hamas and Islamic Jihad. She says, look at the difference between the way the ANC in South Africa kept attention on Nelson Mandela while he was in jail, said Boutou. They made sure people knew who he was, but Abbas has done his best to extinguish Barghouti, so young people barely know who he is after so many years behind bars. The prisoners are a hugely powerful and symbolic issue for Palestinians, and yet Abbas has preferred not to capitalize on it. Diana Bluetooth. So I'll show you Marwan Barghouti sentenced. This is from he was convicted of terrorism This from the Telegraph, which is a right-leaning publication in the UK. He's convicted for the murder of 5 people. So that's not nonviolent strategies. Okay. Again, they're talking about, oh, he's a student of nonviolent strategies of resistance like those of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Okay, so is that after the 5 murders that you were convicted of? By the way, those are only the murders he was convicted of. And then, they talk about Ahed Tamimi. I have a video about her. Not going to get into that. You can look it up in my, if you can try to find it on my channel. I think I have. Look up on my channel, Ahed Tamimi. This is her name. I do an analysis on that. Basically, this is the way that people on the progressive side, or on the corporate progressive side, both the progressive and corporate progressive side. I was about to say pork, but that would have been offensive to Islam. That's the way that they relate to the issue. I'm somebody, I have no problem with people believing in Islam, professing it, going and doing, fasting during Ramadan, or refraining or going and praying 5 times a day or whatever. I have no problem with people belonging to other religions as long as they don't try to force me into it or they criticize my religious beliefs. But what these people do is they try to divorce the religious element from it entirely. They try to make it seem as if the conflict fits within their dynamic of the way everything works everywhere else. So they don't, they will never ever talk about why there's a war between Pakistan and India that's ongoing in Kashmir. They won't go into why there's Islamic terrorism going on in countries like Thailand and Burma, or Myanmar as they call it, or even in Western China, because for them, if you start to see a pattern of this issue where a religious faith garners a certain tendency towards militancy, then it undermines their whole narrative. They don't believe that religion actually motivates people to do anything. They think it's almost some sort of, thank you, progressives. Nice one. They view it as this, okay? And with this I'll finish. When we talk about the Rajneesh cult, we talk about, the Hare Krishnas also happen in the U.S. We criticize Hinduism. People don't usually object. And I don't even have to state that, there's 1 billion people in India, much more than 1 billion now. A lot of them are Hindu. The vast majority of them are Hindu. And I'm not trying to paint Hinduism as a bad religion. I'm saying, that when we criticize those aspects of it, we're criticizing, a theological problem. We're talking about a cult also. A cult is beyond a religion. It's also a coercive group that forces people into certain ideas. Okay, that's the modern definition of a cult. People say, "Oh, Christianity started out as a cult." Well, we're talking about a different set of behavior here for the group. When we're talking about Islam, the progressive left, they try to throw out all the rules as to how you analyze a situation. Reverend Starkiller says Muslims also try to take over Trinidad and Tobago. I heard something about that a while ago. I don't remember exactly what that was about. By the way, there are, look at what's happening here. I found this a while ago. It was a different spelling. Yeah, it was this spelling. Here we go.
A quienes algunos califican como organización terrorista, tendrá su versión peruana. Y esta ha empezado a construirse
okay, I'll
en
try
Abancay.
to
Aquí
free translate right now.
Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah.
So this is in Apurimac, which is a very remote Andean part of Peru.
Abancay, Apurímac. Poco antes que el sol se oculte, llega el momento de orar nuevamente a Alá.
So they said the hour of prayer has arrived.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Estos jóvenes apurimeños son parte de la comunidad más grande y activa de musulmanes.
Says these people from Apurimac are, members of the largest community of Muslims in Peru.
Musulmanes conversos en el país. Ellos ahora están celebrando el mes del Ramadán, equivalente a la Nochebuena del cristianismo. Es un mes sagrado en el que por su fe y creencias practican el ayuno diario. La celebración del Ramadán esta vez es aún más especial para ellos, gracias a la llegada.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad quiere decir una súplica a Dios, dice Dios nuestro bendiga a Muhammad y a su sagrada familia. Y Allahu Akbar significa Dios es el más grande.
So he's explaining, Allahu Akbar means God is great.
Y bueno, no hay nada más grande que si el universo es grande, Dios es más grande.
Nothing in the universe is greater than God.
El Sheikh Ali Abdurrahman Paul domina el árabe, es de nacionalidad argentina pero musulmán desde que tenía 17 años. Ha vivido en Irán y se presenta como miembro de la Organización Islámica Argentina de la Mezquita Tawhid de Buenos Aires. Es la tercera.
So it's explaining this guy is basically an Argentine Islamic, Muslim who has learned in Iran.
La vez que visita Bancay y la primera en la que otorga una entrevista a un medio de comunicación nacional.
El verdadero musulmán es un hombre de paz. Puede defenderse, eso sí, pero si no, básicamente, partiendo de una base, es un hombre de paz.
He says we're bringing Islam in the name of peace, but they're showing this is the picture of the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. You see here, this is Ali Khamenei.
Legítima defensa cuando se es agredido no es una cosa prohibida. Para el musulmán no.
¿Por qué el interés de Irán de que el Islam se instale en el Perú?
They're asking why is there an interest for Iran that Islam would become prevalent in Peru?
Esa es importante para nosotros también. Como en cualquier religión también. Los cristianos, por ejemplo, pentecostales o testigos de Jehová se van a Norteamérica a hacer algún curso, etc. Los judíos también se van a Israel a hacer un curso de capacitación.
Y espera que aquí siga creciendo.
So he actually says, it's the same as, Pentecostals or whatever, or Jews or whatever. Oh, even the Jews have their own place in Israel or whatever.
¿El grupo de musulmanes?
Bueno, esperemos, si Dios quiere.
Para Joseph Umire, un experto internacional en la influencia de Irán en América Latina, el objetivo es otro.
Es un proceso de infiltración a la sociedad peruana.
He's saying it's a process of infiltration of Peruvian society. So this is not white anti-Islamic racism. These are, this person, he does have the American flag in the background, so that could be a point of bias. So let's hear what he has to say. There's a Peruvian who's complaining about Islam in his country.
No con el mensaje de religión, con el mensaje de la revolución iraní.
He's saying it's not a religious message, but it's a revolutionary message for the Islamic revolution of Iran.
Mensaje, porque ellos señalan que el mensaje es conocer el Corán y la palabra de Dios.
Claro, eso es parte, no digamos la parte de musulmán, la parte de Islam, pero la otra parte donde habla.
So he's saying, sure, there is, she interjected, she said, how come it's not the message of Muhammad in the Quran? He says, well, of course it's part of it.
Y si lees los textos, lo que dicen es la parte contra el occidente, contra Estados Unidos, contra Israel, contra lo que ellos llaman el imperialismo de capitalismo.
So he explains, it's also part of, their vanguard fight against capitalism and colonialism and imperialism of Israel and the West. And of the USA.
La respuesta del Sheikh fue enérgica y de contundente posición.
Ellos hablan de terrorista, el primer terrorista es Norteamérica en ese sentido, el Estado, no el pueblo. A nosotros nos critican por la ley del talión. Pero la ley del talión nos dice, si alguien mató a una persona, entonces se debe matar a esa persona. Se puede tomar represalia por uno. Si por causa, bueno, han muerto en esas torres gemelas 3.000 personas, la ley del talión va a decir, bueno, ustedes tomen represalia y maten 3.000 personas, nada más. Eso es lo que Dios dice y eso es lo que nosotros tratamos de seguir y obedecer. Pero ellos matan entonces 30.000, 100.000, así nomás.
Desde el 2011, nuestro país es visitado constantemente por líderes musulmanes de Irán, difusores del Islam para Latinoamérica.
Again, they're showing that this is the picture of Ayatollah Khomeini, who is the late supreme leader of Iran. Reverend Starkiller says it's not at all Muslims have always migrated to South America, but since all those far left dictators took over South America, things have been taking a turn for the worse around here. Yeah, I mean, I know Reverend is from Brazil. There's a very large Lebanese population, especially in Brazil. There's a large Palestinian population in Chile. There's a large Palestinian population in Venezuela. But, it's not meant to say, these people can't live there. But what we're talking about is a concerted effort to indoctrinate the people already living there in the Islamic religion. Let's keep going.
América, como el Sheikh Abdul Karim Paz, a quien se le ve en este video impartiendo clases durante un encuentro entre cristianos y musulmanes en Lima. El Sheikh Edgardo Rubén Assad también ha sido constante visitante de la comunidad islámica en Abancay. Ambos son argentinos, como el Sheikh Ali Abdurrahman Pol, todos hombres de confianza de Mohsen Rabbani, un diplomático iraní señalado por la justicia argentina como el máximo responsable del ataque.
So it's saying some of these people are fugitives or linked to a terrorist attack from, this was either one, there were two in 1991 and 1994 by Hezbollah in Buenos Aires in Argentina against the Jewish community center there. I think there were like 78 people dead or something.
Terrorista contra la mutual israelita AMIA en 1994.
¿Qué fue lo de la AMIA exactamente? Para ustedes.
La AMIA lo más probable un autoatentado, porque fue una implosión. Los dos atentados a la embajada y a la AMIA fueron implosiones. Si fuera a ser un coche bomba, como ellos dicho, hubiera habido una explosión. Mohsen Rabbani es mi maestro.
So he's claiming that those were false flag operations. They didn't even, they were implosions. They weren't explosions or whatever. No, the fact of the matter is that the Argentine investigations have revealed that there were ties to Hezbollah.
Y para mí no mata ni un mosquito.
He says, I haven't even killed a mosquito or whatever. Anyway, I don't have any more time to give. I know that, sorry for the interruption earlier. I don't know if this would have been longer if we would have kept going that time, but it was an important thing to do. Lennon McCarthy says, we just need to say moderate Islam is welcome and whacked out terrorist shit is not. Well, that's where, how do you even put a line? The line is, the issue is this, okay? Terrorism is an action and a tactic. Religion is a belief system. And the belief system of Islam, in many of these cases, has facilitated the belief that you could justify acts of terrorism and even of, beyond terrorism. I mean, the things that have happened in Central Asia, for example, in across several centuries, or in wherever Turkey has been. The Turks conquered several countries. They used to go into Eastern Europe and just destroy entire countries and conquer them in the name of Islam. A lot of these things were done in order to spread Islam, for by the sword, by al-Saif, they call it. So look, I am not trying to say people cannot believe in a religion just because I dislike it, and that includes Islam. I've worked with people who are Muslims. I've served in a military unit with well, I don't think it was Muslim, but who gives a fuck? I don't have a problem with people believing in that religion. What I have a problem with is people saying, well, you can't discuss that religion. Well, if that's your proposal, that we live in a society where we can't discuss something openly, then, you need to go fuck yourself and figure out a country where you can go to where, they believe in speech policing like you. You can go to Iran. You can go to Saudi Arabia. You can go to Russia. All those countries believe in that type of speech policing. As long as I live in this country, I am not going to advocate for speech policing. I'm not even one of these people that wants to ban the Qurans. Reverend Starkiller says, and the judge in charge of the investigation got murdered after finding ties between the Kirchners and Hezbollah and Iran. I thought it was the prosecutor, but yeah, I did hear about that. Daniel Neeson, I think his name was. McCarthy says we need to draw a line. Sharia is only okay when it doesn't break our laws, period. Yeah. If they want to live under their own laws, that's fine, but it's not meant to impose it on other people. He says, no, I mean the actions, but some Islams preach hate. They do preach hate, and I think it's difficult. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to propose laws here. That's about it. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good weekend. I'll probably be back either tomorrow night or sometime Sunday. And, please like, share, subscribe. Read the Steemit article in the description, first article in the description highlighted right here, and upvote it and share it. We can keep talking. Reverend Starkiller, if you ever want to be on, Lennon McCarthy, you've been on, contact me. We can talk about it. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.